Okay, the bowl. So since our home was active, right, we did take other, precautionary steps, like we would put salt and certain things in our mop water when we clean the home and things like that. But we had this big, huge wooden salad bowl. It was very old, but it was this really big, huge wooden salad bowl, and it had one function and one function only. My grandmother would set it on the coffee table in the front room, and she would fill it with citrus. So when we would go to the grocery store every Friday, of course, obviously she got everything for the house, and she got extra citrus just for the bowl. So oranges, lemons, limes, and especially grapefruit stayed in this bowl. And then in the winter time, she would get the nut mix. So in the winter time, nuts were also added to the bowl, like shelled almonds, walnuts, pecans, and macadamias, because nuts are protective as well. And so we changed it out every week. Whoever pulled the extra citrus bag out of the groceries, we would go get the bowl, take it out of the back door, which was through the kitchen, take it to the garbage outside, dump it, bring it back in, put some salt and some warm water, rinse out the bowl, dry it, and put more citrus back in, and it was set back in the living room. And so this one particular time, this was around Christmas, so there was nuts in the bowl as well. Now, mind you, this was probably about 2 to 3 days after we had just changed the bowl, and me and my aunt are in the front room. We have the Christmas tree up, and we're actually going through lights, making sure they're okay. Does a fuse need to be changed? Does a bulb need to be changed? So we're sitting on the floor in front of the Christmas tree, and we're prepping everything. So it was a tradition in our family that when we put the tree up, we always decorated the tree as a family. And at this time, my mom was deployed. She was in Desert Storm. And my cousin, who is my Aunt Kathy's daughter, she was probably about 1.5, almost 2 at the time. And so she was in there with us, just kind of toddling around. My grandfather was in the den watching TV. And from where I was sitting, I had a direct line of sight to my grandmother, who was in the kitchen at her favorite spot at the kitchen table, chain smoking her Moors and drinking her coffee while she was waiting for cookies in the oven. So the grown-ups would have coffee, the kids would have hot chocolate, and we would have cookies and or cake, and we decorated the tree as a family. This is just what we did all the time. And unfortunately, again, my mom wasn't there because she was in Desert Storm. So me and my aunt are sitting on the floor, tangled up in Christmas lights, and next thing we know, we hear Ashley just kind of coo and make a noise, and we looked, and she has this orange in her hand out of the bowl. And it's kind of surprising to us because this orange is in really bad shape, especially considering the fact that we just put that in the bowl like 2 days ago. And so we're tangled up and we're trying to get to her, and it's very moldy. It's completely dry, it's completely moldy, and we're trying to unravel ourselves to get to her. And we were like, no, and she doesn't understand. But before we could get to her, she breaks the orange open. And the weird thing was, yes, it was that little wisp of, the mold spores being released into the house, but there was it was like a separate wisp that came out of the orange, and it just kind of lingered in the air for a second, and it was black, and it looked wet. Like, it looked slick, and it just kind of lingered there for a couple of seconds, and then it dissipated into the house with almost like a sound. And me and my aunt are just wide-eyed, mouths open, because this has never happened before. Number one, nobody has ever touched the bowl. 2, despite the fact that we live in a haunted house, that was new. And now we're kind of scared to approach Ashley, because we're like, is that thing in her? Like, is she about to check? We didn't know. But anyway, we hear footsteps, and my grandfather is going into the kitchen. He says something to my grandmother, and they start arguing within seconds. Now, mind you, this all happens from the breaking to the arguing, maybe a span of 20 seconds. And my grandparents don't argue like that, right? They don't argue. They have their playful shit talking banter back and forth, but arguing between them is not a thing. And so they start arguing instantly out of nowhere, and this makes us snap out of it. My aunt grabs her daughter and she runs in the kitchen. Now my grandparents are not in each other's space, right? They're quite far apart. My grandmother is still sitting there smoking, and my grandfather is at like the entryway of the kitchen near the stove, so they're probably about 10-15 feet apart. And my aunt has my cousin, and she's like, no, stop. Ashley broke an orange in the bowl. This is not you all. Stop. Mind you, I'm behind her like goddamn football player. She put like some of the newspaper, because when we would put the lights up, we would roll up old newspaper and just kind of use that as a spool. She had thrown a piece of paper over the bowl. She got the baby, I got the bowl. I'm going through the kitchen like I got a football. I'm running out the back door to go empty this and bring it back in. And I come back in, and my aunt has quailed them, and she has my cousin sitting on the sink. She's washing her hands, just practicality. She just touched nasty ass moldy fruit. And my grandmother was like, okay, put more fruit in the bowl. She grabbed a pot, filled it with hot water. She actually used some of the tea, because my grandfather was a tea drinker in the evenings, and so she had taken some of his already hot water out of his tea kettle, put in a pot, added some more hot water, and she added like she put some cinnamon, some rosemary, and she cut up an orange and put it in there. And then the energy in the home just kind of went back to normal. But my aunt, like, she had to get in between them, and she was like, just time out, because obviously whatever was in that orange just dissipated out into the home and caused this. So we've always had a bowl, right? I live in an active home now. We have a citrus bowl. And so it's just another good, really simple and practical layer of protection that you guys can use. So if you get some fruit home from the grocery store and it seems like it spoils really, really quickly, you might want to do a spiritual cleanse on the home. And we did that regularly. We put certain things in mop water, and there were certain oils that my grandmother would add like to the towels when we would furniture polish. So that was part of our normal cleansing. I honestly didn't know that putting herbs and certain things in mop water was not something that everybody did, again, until I got older and people didn't live in haunted houses. But that citrus bowl was our thing. I've never not had a bowl in my house. And it kind of makes sense why that orange was like that, because it wasn't on top. Because when we went into the living room, the fruit that was visible within the bowl was fine. And so my cousin, like, she kind of dug through to get this. And it makes sense because it was either the night before or earlier that day. I heard someone call my name. I went to them and they were like, I did not call you, go check the bowl. And when I checked the bowl, it was fine. So, but it was just all of the fruit that was on top. And so the simmer pot helped. And my grandfather, he was a man of few words, baby. But when Joe spoke, everything moved, dead or alive. And he popped his shit. And whatever came up out of that orange got right the hell on. So, yeah. And that was probably the oddest thing that we had experienced, especially growing up in a haunted house. That was one of those things that we just, what the fuck was that? Because my aunt was like, is that black? I was like, yeah, and it's not air. Like, it was just a crazy, so it was actually one of the crazier experiences out of all of the things that I experienced living in a haunted house. So get a citrus bowl and leave it there and change it out once a week. That'll help keep the energy in your home clean and clear.